So here is where the gap starts. Until now, I guess I only explained how you are trained to behave, to deal with reality in a way that in many ways is completely different than everything that you are brought up on. But just a few months ago, I had an argument with my father, who is obviously very unsupportive of what I'm doing now. And at some point he told me well, I told him, sorry, it went like this. I was supposed to participate in this lecture, and he told me, well, you can say whatever you want, but you have to point out that there is an Israeli soldier abducted by Hamas. And I told him, well, that's true, but there are also thousands of Palestinians in Israeli prisons. And he told me that, how can you compare this? I told him, how can you avoid the comparison? And he told me, because they are all terrorists. And I told him, well, as a person who arrested dozens, if not more, out of these so-called terrorists, I can tell you that many of them are not terrorists. And he was completely shook up and asked me, what do you mean? So here is where the gap is. During my service, one of the missions that we were sent to do is something which is very common and has many names. It's called to show presence. Sometimes it's called a violent patrol or loud patrol. Sometimes it's called, I guess it has a lot of names that don't really, I guess, explain what you're doing. What you're actually doing is you go inside Palestinian towns with the jeeps or by foot, you walk around, and the idea is to show your presence. How they were saying that in the briefings that we were given, we were told that we need to create a feeling of uncertainty among the Palestinian population, so they would vomit the terrorists out of them, so they would know that they are not safe anywhere. So we would go or drive inside their villages and throw stun grenades. And the minute that the children from the village would start throwing stones at us, we would get out of the jeep and start shooting rubber bullets, gas grenades, and stuff like that. Now, 1 day after, 2 days after, we would be back in the village in the middle of the night, and we will be arresting those children that were throwing stones at us. And in the eyes of the typical Israeli, the story starts here. You know, they were throwing stones, and therefore we have to arrest them. They don't know that the reason that they were throwing stones was that we were going inside their villages in order to provoke them. And so I was talking to my father, and I was telling him exactly that. I was telling him those terrorists were sometimes 12-year-olds that were throwing stones after we provoked them, and not just them. We were arresting sometimes, obviously, gunmen and terrorists that were planning suicide bombings. We were arresting these people also. But we were also arresting the relatives of the people that we were looking for. We were arresting... we arrested somebody that had a city burning factory in his house. We were arresting dozens of people. And again, to the typical Israeli, this part of the story does not exist. In my eyes, that's where the problem starts. Because people, good, moral people, think that everything that happens here is all about security. They are saying, all right, sometimes there is a moral price. Sometimes there are the rotten apples, those soldiers that go crazy. But in the end, we have to be there in order to protect our country. But what I experienced in my military service, and after interviewing hundreds of soldiers, I can see that this is not just my story, or not just my unit story, is that this is not just about security. Actually, security is not the main thing here. Control, that's the story here. If we wish to control the West Bank, there are certain things that we need to do or that we choose to do. One of those things is, I guess, to make the Palestinian civil society or Palestinian civilians, to make them afraid of us. You do it by patrolling the villages, and you're doing it by doing routine random checkpoints between their villages, and you're doing it by sometimes slapping them around, to be honest. There are a lot of ways. It's up to the soldiers, it's up to the unit. Now, we in Breaking the Silence, we don't really have an answer on how the political reality should be changed in order to end this conflict. But we believe that in order to reach some kind of I don't know, reconciliation, maybe not even that. In order to find a solution, we believe that first of all, we need to take responsibility. We need to be accountable for the things that we are doing. And when you are trapped in this fear, that everything that happens, and that everything that you need to, the perspective is always security, then obviously those two sides will always be very far from each other. So we don't really have the ability to affect the Palestinian society. But we believe that we have the ability to affect the society that sent us, and that's the Israelis. So we're coming to them, I guess, and telling them this is what we did. Now when you have all this, when you have the facts, then now it's your duty to try and find a solution. We don't know if we need 2 states or 1 state. Again, to be honest, we're not generals and we're not politicians. We're in our 20s. All we know is what we did. We believe that everybody has to know that, because only then they can make a decision. So that, I guess, on a shoestring is what Breaking the Silence stands for.